Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, finding those albums that may have been lost over time. If a new artist is discovered along the way, that's all the better. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one album to discuss. Once that is settled, we will invite the artists to Thunderlove Studio to chat with your hosts, Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Abandoned Albums is simple: to make sure artists' recorded work remains, or in some cases, lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
Fresh off of her guest appearance on a Smashing Pumpkins album, and fresh off the release of her brand new solo record as Kid Tigrrr, and in the process of working on her band NIIGHTS' new record, which was featured on a recent webisode. Are they webisodes? I don't know. YouTube thing. Whatever. Reverend Guitars, an excellent, excellent guitar manufacturer, maker of the Billy Corgan signature guitar series, I might add, featured NIIGHTS, and they debuted one of those new songs that are going to be on the record. So she's just a little bit active right now.
And she's a painter.
Visual artist. Model, has been featured in a number of, for lack of a better word, high art photography.
Okay. Photography.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So painting, photography, writing. I think she's got
That's right.
Some stories in her head that she's looking to find a different outlet for, maybe via a novel, maybe via a comic book. Who knows? She's kind of an avalanche of creativity, whom I had the pleasure of meeting when I lived in Cleveland. She's just a lovely person. I think people that listen to the episode are going to come away thinking, I've got to go and listen to all of her stuff. And that is, after all, the goal of the show, right? We want to make you want to listen to new music. I was so pleased when we posted the Las Nubes episode, and a friend of mine reached out and said, this is your album of the year. It is also my album of the year, and I wouldn't have found it without your show, so thank you.
Oh, wow.
And I'd like to encourage people who listen to the show to do that more, because I would inject that shit straight into my veins if I could. It is the fuel that keeps us going. Thank you for the feedback. It was a lovely email to get. And I agree, that album kicks ass.
Yeah. Now, Jenna is one of the many reasons that Cleveland rocks.
It is. I lived in Cleveland for 6 years. I think Cleveland gets a bum rap. I'm an advocate for the city. I had a lovely time there. Certainly a great city if you're a sports fan, but also a fantastic music scene. And I think that, in spite of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame being there, because I don't think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame contributes anything to a local scene. Let's talk about Jenna. Let's talk about NIIGHTS. Let's talk about Kid Tigrrr, with multiple R's. All of her band names are Google proof. Knights with 2 eyes,
Right.
Kid Tigrrr, Kid Tigrrr, making it easier to search and find the music, but maybe less intuitive to spell if you just heard it. So we call it out and remind people, spell it right, folks.
Yeah. Yes. What a lovely, lovely conversation.
Yes, a very nice person, full of creativity and wonder, and you're going to enjoy it. So here's our conversation with Jenna Fournier.
Hey, Troy.
I'm in New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh,
I
okay.
I currently live in Birmingham, Alabama, but I met you for the first time at Barrio when I was living downtown. I had gone out with a friend for tacos and was like, she pointed you out. She said, "Have you heard her band?" And I said, "I don't even know who her is." And she pointed at you and she said, "You need to check out NIIGHTS." And I did. And I think shortly thereafter was the first time I saw you when you guys opened for Sleigh Bells down at the Beachland Ballroom.
Okay, that was a while ago. Yeah. Yeah, was I bartending at Barrio?
You were.
Okay, there you go. There it is. Yeah, I have a timeline now. Okay. Well, hi, Keith. I have not met you, right?
No, you have not. Not that I'm aware of.
I didn't think so. Okay.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. We have a thunderstorm and tornado warning today. So that's the situation. But hey, we made it happen.
You're in a safe place, right?
Do what?
You're in a safe place, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
there is a basement if he start hearing things get weird and there's actually a tornado.
Okay, cool. That's our main concern here at Abandoned Albums is your safety. We want our guests to be safe.
I mean, it would be a really interesting podcast if a tornado hit in the middle of it.
Yes, it would. It would be a first.
It's almost worth it. It would almost be worth the damage.
No, ma'am. Let's keep everybody safe. Jenna, let's start with pronunciations. Jenna, is it Jenna Fournier? Fournier? How are we saying the last name?
It is Fournier. Yes,
Fournier.
it's French. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Jenna, most people, if they were to Google you, it's important to mention that your band NIIGHTS has 2 eyes. It's NIIGHTS. You also like to repeat letters in your solo project. You go by Kid Tigrrr, and it's TIGRRR. So for those of you listening to the podcast, if you want to Google, make sure you're putting the right sequence of letters into Google when you search for Kid Tigrrr.
We actually made those choices specifically for Google and SEO. When the band was NIIGHTS with 1 eye, imagine that, a band that almost no one's ever heard of called NIIGHTS is very difficult to find on Google, even if you know the genre and the city we're based out of. So we added the I so we didn't have to change the band name. And then with Kid Tigrrr, I kind of followed suit. That had just been my Instagram name for a while, and it wasn't taken, and it was easy to find in Google, so I just stuck with it.
There's no Winnie the Pooh affiliation.
No, but people do ask. They say, "Is it Tigger?" It's supposed to be Tiger. I do you want the story of that?
Yeah.
I was making a comic book that I had a little world where all the characters were based on an animal, and they had sort of some of those animal traits. And my character was the little girl protagonist, and she was a tiger, fierce, and they stand for balance and stuff like that. And I originally wanted a band where everybody had to dress like their animal, and then they would also be featured in the comic book, and it was a whole universe in my head. None of that has ever been finished or come to fruition, of course. But in my head, it's been there for a very long time. One of these days, you might get the first comic book series, but takes a lot of time to draw all of that. But so that's kind of where it came from.
Okay.
And then the RRR, the GRRR, it's kind of a little bit of a nod to the Riot Girls movement. Yay, feminism.
Oh,
And yeah, people don't seem to pick up on that part of it, but I like the juxtaposition against Kid because I think there's a childlike spirit that goes into the artwork. So that's the story behind the very dumb name.
oh, it's not a dumb name at all. I don't think, for what it's worth.
Okay.
No.
And for what it's worth, I absolutely got the Riot Girl connection. So I don't
you?
think you're
Good.
Yeah, for sure. For
Good.
sure. Jenna, congrats are in order. I think we'd be burying the lead here if we didn't talk about a big story in your life right now, which is you're featured on the new Smashing Pumpkins record.
Yes.
That's pretty neato.
It's very cool. I've been a Pumpkins fan for a long time. My band NIIGHTS is very inspired, of course, by the sound of the Pumpkins, both the dynamics and the guitar. And our drummer is a huge Jimmy Chamberlain fan, and actually married his wife because they both had Smashing Pumpkins screen names. So it's a bunch of pumpkin geeks in a band together. So it's definitely a dream come true and huge for me to be part of.
How does that happen? Who reaches out to who on that?
Billy reached out to me to invite me onto the record, but we started talking because I reached out to him. For those that don't know, because they don't follow him on social media, he sometimes polls his fans and does casting calls from his fan base looking for things like artwork, like whether it's for the album art or whatever. Or when I first reached out to him, he was doing a storybook audition and looking for a vocalist to be featured in this sort of storybook project that he was doing, maybe for some of his solo stuff. I'm not sure if it ever happened as a storybook, but I had sent a audition of just singing and playing guitar for that. And that's sort of what started the conversation, slightly before the world went nuts in 2020. And then we just kind of remained in touch through the pandemic. He was doing a bunch of live streams and had brought me into the live stream a couple times. And I think all of us were just spending more time on our phones that year in general. And that's kind of where we started a rapport and connected over music and stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's fun that you mentioned, because I think when you listen to NIIGHTS, I do think you hear the parallels. I think you hear the influence and go, oh, these people like the Smashing Pumpkins for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if memory serves, you play one of the Billy Corgan Reverend guitars, like you play his signature model guitar, or at least you have one of them that I know of.
Correct, I do.
What a dream come true. It's so cool.
Yeah, I met Ken, the owner of Reverend, at Earthquaker Day, which happens in Akron, Ohio, and I try to go to every year because it's a cool festival with pedal clinics and stuff. And I also play quite a few Earthquaker pedals. So I met Ken from Reverend at an Earthquaker Day, and he had one of the Billy's signature models on display. And I had never seen one or picked it up before, and I picked it up, and to my surprise, the neck fit my hands perfectly, which I would have never in a million years guessed, because Billy he's a tall dude with slightly larger hands than me. I do have kind of long alien fingers for a woman, I've been told many times, but his hands, he probably has a couple inches on his fingers. And I couldn't believe the neck fit so perfectly. So I fell in love kind of instantly. Plus, of course, it was his signature guitar, and it has these really cute etched pickups that I've never seen etchings on pickups like that before. And at the time, it didn't come in pink. Of course, I care about the color of my guitar, so very excited to have a pink one. And Reverend Ken from Reverend ended up calling me and basically telling me he wanted to displace my SG because that was my main guitar. And he knew I had bought a Reverend, but I bought the 6-gun to replace my jazz master because I need a guitar with a trem for my second guitar, but my main guitar, I need something that I can change the tuning on a lot without it falling out of tune and stuff. So he asked why I wasn't playing the Reverend he knew I had bought, and I told him, part of it is because I don't I need a hardtail for my number one X, but the other part of it was because it was really heavy. And the thing I had liked about the SG so much is it was so light. It's really easy to play. I felt like I could kind of whip it around and even bend it a little bit, and it didn't weigh on my shoulder because I'll practice for 4, 5, 6 hours in a room at a time. And so they walked around. Shout out to Reverend for taking care of their people. They walked around and found me the lightest body they could find of Billy's signature and sent me that one, so that it kind of knocked my SG out of the picture. Rest in peace, Valentine. And Starla's my new guitar now.
Nice. I love that you named it Starla.
Yeah.
I saw your social media post today talking about how many people have asked you which songs you contributed to. I'm curious to know a little bit more about the workflow and what did that look like. And I know Katie Cole did all of the backing vocals. She recorded in Nashville. Were you in Nashville or did you record there in Cleveland? Tell us a little bit more about which songs and how that worked.
It was in Nashville. They flew me into Nashville and put me up for a night. And I went and met up with Howard and Katie, and we knocked out 6 songs in one very long session. And then I actually flew home that night. So it was really cool. Katie does the arrangements. Her and Billy and Howard, I believe, work on those all together and figure the arrangements out. So when they brought me in, a lot of that was already laid down, and I was doubling Katie's parts. Or she would lay it down and then I would double her parts. The idea that they had, Katie, for those that don't know, sang on their last couple records and she's touring with the band. They were blending my voice in with hers and kind of creating a new voice from the two of us blended together, singing the same parts. So that's what you're hearing. And it kind of makes sense because I think Katie has a little more soul in her voice and I have a lot of air in my voice. So when you put it together, you get a really full sound. I'm speculating. Maybe that's the thought process behind that.
Was there one particular song that you got to sing on that was like a favorite?
My favorite at the time were Eden and 999. I loved Sikami as well, but I don't know if you've listened to them, Eden and 999, they just sounded so massive in the studio. When you hear stuff coming out of studio monitors and stuff, it's just really exciting. And those were my favorite at the time, but now that the record's all said and done and I'm listening again, I'm going to say Sikami's probably my favorite.
It's fun to hear you say that you know that your style and your vocal performance has some air in it, because I think I was trying to explain to Keith what is unique about Nights, and the first time I saw your band, because Sleigh Bells, pretty loud, pretty rockin' band.
Yeah.
I went into that night thinking, okay, I have an idea of what I'm going to get. And you hear a song like Helleborus or is it Sylvia?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fractured thoughts crack through the morning. The slightest rustling crystal. My heart tips asunder.
You're a riffy band. It's very heavy, very. I imagine there's got to be a Big Muff fuzz pedal in there somewhere, or the equivalent, right? And then you start singing, and it's like what, but it's but her voice and the riffs and but hang on, this like there's a quality to your voice that you wouldn't necessarily put two and two together and say, well, that voice definitely good. Like you're not a traditional rock singer, I don't think. And that's what makes the band really unique. So is that something you guys lean into?
I it's hellish. I to be honest, I use in-ear monitors, and sometimes I still struggle to hear myself live. Recording is no problem. That part's easy. I have a lighter voice. When I met Frankie and we started Nights, way back in the day, there was already a band called NIIGHTS that had just kind of started, and they lost their singer. And their singer was originally a male that sang very falsetto. And Frank wanted to find a light female singer because Frank was really into shoegaze, which wasn't popular in 2010. You know, people either thought it was really outdated, you're stuck in the 90s, you know, or it was just something they had never heard of. So it kind of made us a really polarizing band at the time. I remember very specifically, and I would never say who, but there was a local radio host that said they would like the band if it weren't for my insipid vocals. And I know I was young, and it stung a little, but even still, I kind of knew. I was like, well, that means we're doing something really different. And people would complain a lot that they couldn't hear the vocals live, and they didn't understand that we were kind of going for that. And now, to be fair, maybe from one venue to the next, it was a little less balanced than our personal ideal, but we were going for kind of a shoegazy sound, and it was a struggle because people just weren't familiar with that the way today. You know, fast forward, it's almost a trendy sound now, and a lot of people are going for that ethereal quality. And you know, I hear bands that maybe 10 years ago they would have been playing post rock, but now it's like post rock with extra reverb, right? So I think people hear us, and right away they know what we're going for. But for a while it was difficult.
And 2020, so right around the time the world blew up, I think was the last full length from Nights. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here, Jenna, but I think there's more Nights music in the works, and soon-ish.
Yes, there is, and it's soonish. The cats can the cats don't have to be in a bag.
Okay.
They can roam. They can roam free.
Good.
I wish they were. I wish everyone could see the cats. So, we as a band we move very slowly. But we do have some stuff coming. In fact, Reverend will be. Did a couple live recordings with Reverend of some of the new stuff too, and that'll be coming out sooner than later as well. So it's all slated. It's a lot heavier than, of course, the Kid Tiger project, and it's studio recordings, and that's part of what takes so long. You know, we don't have the luxury of spending 2-3 months in a big studio block. It's spread out over a couple days here, a week there, kind of thing.
I think from what I know about the Kid Tiger stuff, like you do a lot of your own production. You control a lot of your own writing and in-house production for your solo project. How much of the NIIGHTS stuff are you doing yourselves versus, are you just doing drums in the big studio, or is it like the whole kit and caboodle? Speaking of cats.
So NIIGHTS is collaborative writing within the band, and everybody writes their own parts for the most part. Sometimes Frank will write parts for other people because he'll hear a full orchestration in his head. And other times I will have suggestions if I'm kind of the main author of the composition. But there's no formula for NIIGHTS. Everyone kind of contributes and we build the songs up from there. And then when we take it into the studio to record, it's not as much that we're looking for help with writing an arrangement as much as we want to capture the amps. We want the best mics and we want the rooms where you can get a full amp sound and stuff. Whereas with my Kid Tiger bedroom pop stuff, I actually record a lot of the guitars in DI. I add a bunch of plugins to them and I kind of make it up as I go. So it's definitely a different recording approach. But we had done our last record with Jim Wirt, and we started this new one with Jim as well. And we're finishing it up with somebody else. As Frank and I have both kind of really come into our own and wanting more control over the final sound of the mix and the production and stuff.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And also you're good at it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. There's definitely areas where I still very much need help. For the live drums on the Kid Tiger record, that's where I ended up going into a studio to get help crossing the finish line. I have no way to record live drums from home, and I can do some electronic beat programming, and sometimes I stick with that, but other times I want the live drum feeling and energy. So that's how I did that record. And that was also with Jim Wirt. And then because the drums made it sound, a couple of songs sound so much bigger, we ended up retracking guitars or reamping guitars just to get them that much bigger, captured out of an amp.
Yeah.
Is that Jim Wirt, WIRT?
Yes.
Where's he based out? Is he based out of Cleveland?
He's back in California now. He came here from LA, and he ran a studio here for many years. And someone actually pretty recently, I think my project was one of the last two to be done in the studio right before it closed down. That was Superior Sounds, and they are reopening, but he's back in California now.
I am almost 100% certain he produced the Shuffle Puck record.
He may have. He's his big artists that a lot of people know about are Incubus and Fiona Apple.
It's definitely him.
Okay, yeah. Who was saying, and I know he worked with No Doubt back in the day too.
Yeah. So
Jim's,
that's great.
Jim's fun.
That's great.
He's really fun. Yeah.
So pretty big name producer, engineer.
Yeah, he is.
Is there a label, or have you got label support on all this, or is this entirely DIY?
You're talking about the Kid Tiger record,
Yeah.
or just in general?
It-
No, I I I split. I was with NIIGHTS was signed with a label called Tragic Hero Sun Pedal Records, Tragic Hero / Sun Pedal Records, and we were with them for 5 years. And I was also signed to a Japanese label called 2670. And both of those records, both those labels, we parted ways in 2020. The Japanese label, because he just kind of stopped, he kind of put it down himself. So he's not bringing anybody on tour or signing anybody anymore. But the US label, our option period was up, where basically the label either gives you a shit ton of money and you owe them another record, right? Or they don't and you part ways and you're free. And it was a mutual decision, not with, really bad blood or anything, but I wanted to make my DIY record. I'd been sitting on a ton of songs and I wanted more control over the sound of my music. And when I was signed to them with NIIGHTS, I wasn't contractually able to release anything solo without going through the label. So I just was ready after 5 years to kind of have the freedom again to kind of do what I want.
Late summer again, slept through all mornings with a ghost in my head. We make each other feel horrible. I erased it, but it seems to keep coming back. Self-medicated with the love and
Well, it seems to have been freeing for you because you're very active with Kid Tigrrr. I mean, you perform live a lot. And if you go to the Kid Tigrrr Bandcamp page, you've got a number of releases under your belt now.
Yeah. So the rest of the album's coming September 6th. And I guess it's a podcast, so I would show you, but we're not keeping video. But I have all these songs. Here's a rainbow of index cards of like 40 more songs ready to go that are half recorded. So basically it's kind of picking the best ones and putting the next record together and then finishing it. I don't have a timeline on that, but it'll be faster than 3 years. This last one took 3 years because I had to learn how to use Logic. I didn't really know I was on GarageBand, so I upgraded to Logic and kind of had to figure out how to do stuff. And now that I know my way around a little more, I think it'll go a lot faster to finish the next one.
It's a lot easier if you just give it to Jim Wirt.
It is easy. Well, he did mix it.
Oh, did it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, and some of the stuff I had mixed and I had thrown automation all over it and stuff, and it was more of him balancing it and touching it up. And some of the stuff he very much mixed and put his fingerprint on for sure. Jim has a very professional glossy polish that if I don't work with him again, I don't know if it won't sound the same, So to me, Jim has a very strong fingerprint on his work.
Let's get to know Jenna, the woman. Did you grow up in Cleveland? Are you a Cleveland gal?
The woman. I did not grow up completely in Cleveland. I was born in California, moved to Colorado, then to Las Vegas. Both my folks were in the military. They met in the military, and my dad's job moved him around a ton.
Hmm.
I did land in Cleveland for a couple years, and then the family moved back to Vegas, and then we moved back to Cleveland. And before I didn't want to graduate high school out here, so I did post-secondary. And as soon as I turned 18, I think within a week, I was back in Vegas. I did not want to be in Ohio for a while, but then I got back to Vegas, and it was a little wild and a little rough. And I lasted less than 2 years, and I came back to Cleveland, and I started going to open mics, and I started meeting people in the music community, and I never left Cleveland again.
That's great.
Yeah.
Are you from a family that's into music?
Music fans. My dad is a huge music fan. My mother had a guitar in the house because she strummed a little guitar. I would say my folks are both creative and both music lovers. But my dad, he says he has an ear that he believes he gave to me, in a sense that, if you have you have a song in your mind and you sit down on piano, you can just kind of pluck it out by ear. So there's sort of that intuitive side of it, rather than the math side that I think some people play from. Like I'm not studied in music theory, but I kind of wish I was, because I feel like I'd be much more efficient. But no, I started teaching myself, dating guys in bands. I wanted to do it too. And my brother played guitar. I used to sit in my brother's room and sing with him while he played guitar. And that's kind of where it started. So there was a guitar in the house. There was a guitar and sometimes a piano in the house, or at least my grandparents had a piano.
Grown-ups never became peanut butter fans until 1933, when a new kind of peanut butter started to appear in grocery stores. It looked different.
You might be one of the more endorsed musicians we've ever talked to, because I feel like your relationship with Reverend guitars, I mean, you didn't just run down to the store and buy a Reverend. You have a relationship with the manufacturer, and it seems like to me you're a pretty regular fixture with Earthquaker devices. I mean, they make some. This is not the first time we've brought up Earthquaker devices on our show.
Yeah. Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
Cleveland guy, right? Like, I know what's
Yeah.
happening down in Akron. They've got cool shit going on down there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it seems like every Earthquaker day, Kid Tigrrr is one of the headlining acts, and you play there. I think there's maybe, if not a full on endorsement, like you get Earthquaker gear. So where did the interest in soundscapes and using these pedals, instead of just showing up at a singer-songwriter open mic night and strumming an acoustic, you're into the electronic side of guitar rock?
Yeah, I love ambient stuff. I we talked about Vegas a little. Here's something people maybe don't know. I had a big raver phase, and I loved techno music, and I loved dancing, and I still write electronic music. I haven't released much of it. I've done some score work, but I love soundscaping. I love sound. I like a lot of different styles of music, and I like noise, and I loved a band called Sigur Rós, the Icelandic band, before I'd ever heard bands like My Bloody Valentine and Slow Dive, which Frank introduced me to when I joined NIIGHTS. And once I started listening to shoegaze, it was just kind of over. I started approaching the guitar differently, in a sense of, instead of adding effects to the guitar, I was writing with the effects, if that makes sense.
It does.
And it really changed my approach to start, I guess, playing with pedals. And
Swerve
then,
Driver,
oh, go ahead.
the Swerve Driver will do that to you.
You know, I'm sure a lot of people have the exact same story. You know, you start listening to certain stuff, and it changes the way you play.
So I love that you're thinking of it almost as a part of the instrument and not as something on top of.
Yeah, because I think I used to think of effects as something that you add after the fact instead of something that you kind of write with, you know, like maybe mixing it into the paint instead of lacquering the finished painting. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I'm a painter, I make a lot of paint analogies, but um, it's fun, and you know, I think when you listen to a ton of music, you start hearing the same sort of things done over and over, the same go-to tricks, and it starts sounding really sterile. And so for me, me hearing something fresh might mean making a noise that I haven't heard before, right? Even if the songwriting itself is a very familiar sort of traditional structure, if the audio noises are fresh to me, it's exciting.
Very cool.
That makes perfect sense to me. You mentioned your painting, so you've talked about comic books. You're writing and drawing comic books. You're painting. You're singing. You're an accomplished guitar player. There's got to be a book in there somewhere, right? Like that's the only box I think you haven't checked.
You know, it's funny you say that. I think I may only ever write one book. I could be wrong. I have one book started, and it will probably be the only book I write because for me, it's a personal memoir in a sense of a very concentrated time of my life where I ended up in a very abusive relationship and navigated my way out of it. And I want to tell that story because I think people don't understand how those situations happen. But it's a hard story to tell, and it's extra hard, I think, for people to understand now because we live in a time with the internet and cell phones, and it doesn't mean these wild situations don't still happen, but it was probably a lot more common, and it was a lot easier to happen in a time where you didn't have cell phones, and you know, you had to go to a payphone if you needed help, and maybe you didn't have a way to get to a payphone. So I'm telling that story, but I set it in a fantasy world that could either be really far in the past or most likely really far into the future is probably what I think, unless you're in at Island of Atlantis territory. But so it's basically in this dystopian futuristic world where there's some science fiction and some fantasy creatures that have gills and stuff like that going on, but it's all a metaphor for a time where we didn't have cell phones, and so that people can understand how the isolation, for example, happens and things like that. And I by taking it out of reality, I of course overcomplicated it for myself, and so now I have to figure out how to connect some dots that maybe would be a lot easier if I just told it like it was. But it's also not something I work on all the time. You know, it's a when the muses inspire, right? Whereas guitar is a very conscious discipline. You have to, pick your main thing, and it's a discipline. And maybe you don't feel like doing it, but once you get to the gym,
I think maybe the cell tower is letting Jenna down a bit here.
Yes, I think so. Jenna, she's frozen. Jenna.
Oh no. Maybe it was the tornado.
hey, that was the tornado.
Oh no! I jokingly said I hope
back-
it
we're
wasn't the
back.
tornado.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all
Are
right.
you okay?
I am okay. Yeah, I am okay. The house is spinning. No big deal.
Oh,
Let's keep
jeez.
the podcast going.
Jenna. We worry.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
There's a Wizard of Oz joke in here somewhere.
Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Yes, exactly.
Now, where were we? You were telling us a story about your memoir.
Yeah, I was talking about a book I haven't finished. um, it's a thing that some of these other projects, I think, like a lot of creative people, you get a lot of ideas and you start a lot of fires, but you can't nurture all of them. And so for some of these other projects, it's sort of, when the inspiration strikes, I sit down and I put some hours in, and it kind of percolates in the back of my mind, but it's not the thing that I sit down and focus on every day. The way, to finish a record or something, you have to really sit down and focus. And I do try to play guitar with discipline, because I do gig a lot, and that's sort of always on the front burner. But painting and writing and uh, comic books, they're all ways to tell stories,
Mhm.
just like songwriting. They're all ways to tell stories, and sometimes one medium makes more sense than another. But I have to keep up on the musicianship, or the physical skill goes away. It just rusts. I get I rust quickly.
It's getting old sucks, Jenna.
It really does. Talking about how I wanted a guitar that's not heavy on my shoulder. Yes. Getting older sucks, but
Yeah.
I almost asked, did
They're
you mean that
beautiful.
metaphorically
So-
heavy on your shoulder? But no, you actually meant weight. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually wanted something a little lighter.
Yeah.
But
Keith probably identifies with that. So I'm the musician of the pair of us. He's a playwright. So
Yeah.
I do things. I write songs, 3 to 5 minutes. I practice the guitar. I understand that physicality of it. Keith,
Yeah.
you're a poet, so you understand the in poetry probably briefer, but a play, that's more of a commitment.
I try to be disciplined about it, but I too am writing a book now, and I try to be disciplined about it, but I can't. You've got. So oftentimes I'll be in bed, not often, but it'll happen. I'll be in bed at 3:00 and I'll be like, oh, I got to write this dialogue scene. I got to write this. I got to write this. I'll do it in the morning. I'll do it in the morning. Fuck, I got to do it now. I'll get up out of bed and start banging away because Lady Muse has struck. And it's like, okay, there's 3 hours,
Yep.
So I get it.
yeah, I love that you say that. It's a real thing, and it's I think sometimes we keep ourselves so distracted and busy during the day that we don't have our brains on other things, and it's like you're trying to fall asleep and eureka.
Mhm.
And I've learned that if I don't get out of bed, or I don't at least pick my phone up and make myself a note, I'm not going to remember it. And so I will also jump out of bed, scribble something down, and hopefully it's still coherent come morning. But yeah, it's wild how the brain works.
I mean, I have to get up and literally type. My penmanship is
Type.
so atrocious that I will write something down, and I've written things down and not known what I've written down.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Yep.
So it's awful, but yeah, it's a trip. It's a trip.
So
There's an old Hemingway thing. Hemingway said you need to write for 5 minutes a day, and I don't necessarily subscribe to that.
no, why not?
Because I think I'm not. You have to write. I have to write. I should say. Let me rephrase that. I have to write, not when the spirit moves me, but when I feel the push to do it. If I sit down to write for 5 minutes a day, it's like, I don't want to write this. I don't want to write this. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah.
And it never kicks in beyond that. But if I sit down and I'll lean back and let my mind wander, then I can get into it. But to force myself doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me. I prefer the organic.
I think forcing can you can get some really crappy work that way. And some people say, like, just let yourself write shitty songs, right? Write because if you write enough shitty songs, you're going to get to a good one. But everyone has a different process,
Mhm.
you know, and all the self-help books, I think, really focusing on discipline. And I think it really depends too if you're trying to make a job out of it or you're trying to make something that's more, really pure. And sometimes the discipline that needs to be learned is when you do get that 3 a.m. strike of lightning, the discipline isn't for you 5 minutes a day. The discipline is obey that 3 a.m. strike of lightning.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. And there's nothing really math centric to what I do, so it doesn't require discipline.
Right.
Guitar playing, piano playing, music, learning an instrument requires discipline because you've got to before you can noodle off and that I
Well,
don't.
there's a physicality to it. You have
Sure.
there's muscle memory involved.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And the voice too is,
Mhm.
like any other muscle. If I'm not singing regularly, my range shrinks, and if I'm exercising, it grows. And that's another one because I don't always feel like singing. Sometimes you feel like singing while you're making broccoli, and other times you're about to play a gig and you don't feel like singing. But that one is a different kind of discipline too. It's a physical thing for sure.
Yeah.
So what does the Billy bump look like? Billy actually mentioned on his social media, was it Skin that he name dropped? So he put out there to the world, to all of the Billy Corgan fans, that hey, here's this Kid Tiger song Skin that you should be listening to.
I've got it hard, the cost a lot to follow, and you've got a way of taking up all of a space, and I took a hole, made a bed down in your shadows, but you stood in the sunlight, saving my fair face. But I wanna wear my skin, wear my skin, wear my skin. I wanna wear my skin like I did before I became a stranger in it.
I imagine that's a pretty good spike on your numbers. You had to have seen a nice bump from that.
It's really hard to say exactly where people are coming from. I know a lot of people are coming from Billy saying that because they're telling me that. There's multiple comments on my YouTube videos that say, I like anything Billy likes. Billy told me to be here, so I'm here. Billy sent me here. They're telling me that. So it's really cool because I know exactly where they're coming from. As far as streaming services go, it's hard to say. I've been running very small, but putting, $30 here, $30 there into targeted marketing to try to push the singles out as I drop them. And then I do a site called Submit Hub, where basically I promote other people's music on TikTok, and I get tokens, and I use those tokens to submit my own songs to playlists. So that's a little community thing, like Submit Hub community thing that I do that gets some playlisting. without me having to dump a bunch of money into playlisting. Because if you want to pay for that stuff, number one, I'd be worried you'd land on playlists full of bots. But number two, it's expensive. People pay a lot of money to crank their numbers up.
Mhm.
So what I can say is that my numbers are organic, and I know a lot of them have come from his support.
Yeah, Keith and I struggle with that promoting the podcast too. I mean, we know there are podcast hosts that pay for bots, and they can say, well, we've got a million listens to our show, but do you really?
Yeah, that's, I don't know what the end game is there, because if you're paying to have the only thing I can rationalize there is that some people are impressed by optics, right? And some people don't make their own taste. They say, well, this must be good because it's popular.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Those aren't the people that I want to be my fans. I want fans that have their own taste in things and make their own decisions for themselves. I think those are the kind of fans that stick with you and want to support you and actually connect with you. So number one, if you're doing that, you're attracting the wrong kind of fan. You're attracting someone that follows trends. And when you aren't trendy anymore, those fans are gonna disappear.
Right.
So it seems very silly, but it's especially if they're bots, then those bots aren't going to buy a ticket to your live show. Those bots aren't going to buy your t-shirt. Those bots aren't going to get excited about your new episode or single and share it with their friends and talk about you. They're going to do nothing for you. They're purely just there to make you look important, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Us either.
Yeah, we don't get it.
No.
Ego. I think it's about the ego, right?
Well, let's talk about a song. I wonder if I can put you in that headspace of thinking through the lyrics. If Billy likes Skin's a cool tune, but to me, I get really excited about Astro Automata. Tell me about Astro Automata.
Cool. Well, thank you. What about, you mean lyrically about the song?
Or vibe or anything.
It's kind of, the title's kind of a blend
Uh-oh.
between.
Well, at this point, folks, there's another tornado Jenna seems to have been struck by.
This episode will be fun to edit.
And
I think we're back.
Lady Jenna has returned.
Oh,
We are
I'm
back.
so sorry, guys.
You're giving us a heart attack with these tornadoes. We're so worried for your
There's no
safety.
harsh wind. It's just. I think I don't know, bad connection maybe. I have no internet and I have no power still. But would you like me to give you a thank you so much for having you? Thank you so much for having me. It's really excellent, really wonderful to be here.
Hello?
Hello? Not again. Hello? Oh, good.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
You're good.
You're good.
I start pushing buttons. Oh boy.
Yes, at this point, folks, it seems as though we've lost Jenna. So
We will get that album title.
Kid Tigrrr, Stoned and Perhaps Stoned and Animals, NIIGHTS.
Yeah.
They have some new stuff coming out.
And this little side project you might have heard of, the Smashing Pumpkins.
Band out of the Midwest.
Yeah, Chicago, I think.
Chi-Town. So our big thanks to Jenna, and thank you for dialing in on a tornado-riddled evening.
Yeah, I feel like we should verify that, to the best of our knowledge, tornadoes did not strike Jenna's house. She is safe. We may have to put it in the episode notes that, some weeks later we also confirmed that Cleveland is okay.
An epilogue.
Subjective, Cleveland is okay.
Yes.
Depends on who you ask.
In case you're wondering, the guys were able to reconnect with Jenna, and she was fine. It was just a combination of crappy weather and a shitty connection. We're all glad she survived the storm, and thankful she stuck around to share her story with us. Her new Kid Tiger album, Stoned and Animaled, is now available on her Bandcamp page. Be sure to check it out. Remember, Kid Tiger is spelled with 3 R's. While you're there, be sure to look at the NIIGHTS catalog, and that's NIIGHTS spelled with 2 I's. The new Smashing Pumpkins album, Agori Mhori May, of which Jenna contributed backing vocals, is also available. You can stream Kid Tiger, NIIGHTS, and Smashing Pumpkins wherever you stream your favorite music.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Vic Titball.
with help from
Clem Fandango.
At the beginning of this podcast, you were treated to a diverse selection of music, including the soulful sounds of Forever by Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul, the indie vibes of Velvet Roof by Buffalo Tom, and the raw energy of Nevermind by The Replacements. Our theme song is Kiss the Earth by The Renegades. You can stream all of these artists wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were Astro Automata by Kid Tiger, Sigomi by Smashing Pumpkins, Sylvia by NIIGHTS, and lastly, Therapy and Skin by Kid Tiger. You can find links to each artist in the show notes section. You'll also find links to the Bandcamp pages for Kid Tiger and NIIGHTS. Please remember to support independent artists.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki. Mike Pellegrino. Farina Vella.
Eric Beatner, S.W. Loudon, Ronnie Barnett.
Michael Janicki. Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Lucas Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Damon Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is the only chewable tablet made to combat stomach unease associated with mediocrity. Taken daily, Ben Affleck can help combat explosive gastrointestinal shame. You can find a multitude of flavors in the incontinence section of your local pharmacy. Ben Affleck, save yourself the embarrassment.
The side effects include dry mouth, headache, anal leakage, muscle soreness, bad decisions, gender confusion, constipation, evil spirit possession, and banality. Use only as directed.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always, will be Ian for yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.